last thing I want to talk about is the Utah Utes, man. Are y'all overlooking Utah again? Have you not learned your lesson the last 2 years when it comes to Utah football? Like, I have a love-hate relationship with Utah. First of all, this is the most underrated fan base in college football. When I first started talking about college football on a regular basis and I was talking about Utah, I was not expecting the Utes fan base to be one of my biggest viewers and one of my most supportive fan bases on this platform. And you look at Utah going into this year, once again, they're not favorites to win the Pac-12. Surprise, surprise. And you look at what they did last year, right? They upset USC in the Pac-12 championship game. Although Caleb Williams did get injured, I do think that played a pretty big factor, but Utah fans will tell y'all otherwise. I'll give y'all that. And the year before, they smashed Oregon. Not once, but twice, and it wasn't even close. So Utah football is definitely a team that you need to stop overlooking. I think Utah right now is what Wisconsin used to be in the early 2010s of the Big Ten. You never counted them out when it came to their chances of being able to win the Big Ten, but you never really viewed them as a national championship contender. And I'm not saying that to be disrespectful to Utah, but Utah is one of those teams that sometimes they end up having a couple of upsets or two, but they always are able to keep your team from making it to the championship, or they always find a way to end your favorite team's playoff hopes. And that's what Utah is. Utah is what I like to call a home wrecker and a dream ender. You don't want to play Utah if you have college football playoff implications on the line going into the game that you have against the Utes. And you look at what they have coming back this year. Yeah, you lost tight end Dalton Kincaid, but do you know about Brant Kuithe? Brant Kuithe was one of the best tight ends in college football alongside of Dalton Kincaid. Outside of Brock Bowers, it was Dalton Kincaid and Brant Kuithe. And Brant Kuithe last year, he got injured after 4 games. And before that injury, this dude was going off. And then you got Cam Rising, who is a really good quarterback. He's a gamer. This dude is tough as nails. He's somebody that can come through for you in the big moments in the clutch. And they return 83% of their offensive production from last year, which is one of the highest in the Pac-12 going into the 2023 college football season. And you look at the talent that they have at wide receiver. You got Devon Vile, who was second on the team in receptions, yards, and touchdowns. Mooney Park. So you got a really good group of receivers. And then I really love the talent that they have at running back. Now, Utah has got great production out of their running back position over the last couple of years. I think that Utah is one of the best programs in college football when it comes to player development, not just at the running back position, but overall, because you got to remember that Utah isn't one of those programs that brings in top 10, top 15 recruiting classes year after year like a USC or Oregon is able to do. Like, a lot of their guys end up being 3-star recruits. They may be able to get a couple of 4 stars, maybe a 5-star here and there, but the reason why Utah is so good is not because of them always having super stat recruiting classes, but also due to the fact that Kyle Whittingham and his coaching staff are fantastic when it comes to player development, which is key. And when you look at what the Utes have at the running back position, Jaquindon Jackson, Jalen Glover, who I'm really excited to watch this season. I think he could have a breakout year. Michael Bernard, this is one of the best running back cores in all of college football, and not too many people talk about it. We talk about Ohio State, Michigan, but Utah is up there. Now, they may not continually always put guys into the NFL who get drafted. Tavion Thomas, I thought, was going to be a mid-round selection, and he went undrafted. But you look at how talented the running back position has been for Utah over the years. That's a large reason why this team is so tough to beat. You see, I think the Pac-12, why they struggle against Utah is because Utah isn't a finesse team. Oregon and Washington, they like to throw the football all over the field against you. But Utah, you know what they want to do. They want to run the football, and they want to impose their will on you. Most of the times when Utah plays and has all these big upsets, they're the more physical team than their opponents in this conference. This conference just isn't built off physical football. Like, Utah kind of plays like a classic Big Ten SEC team. Smash mouth football. We're going to run it down your throat and we're going to pop you in the chin strap. That's why I love watching Utah football. And Kyle Whittingham, I really feel like this program and this team embodies his personality perfectly. This is a tough football team. They're a scrappy football team. They're going to claw, they're going to scratch, and they're going to find a way to win the game despite all odds, even if you bet against them, even if they're not favorites. And you look at the talent that they have on defense, I'm a little bit concerned about their secondary, all right, but you do have linebacker Lander Barton, who was highly touted coming out of high school. He was a true freshman last year, and he probably is the best linebacker going into this season in the Pac-12. He was one of the best linebackers in the Pac-12 last year, and this was as a true freshman. And their secondary, it was good on paper, but at times, though, they were prone to giving up some big plays in the passing game. I feel like they gave up a lot of big plays in the passing game in certain games. USC, UCLA. Now, their defensive line is going to be really good. As a matter of fact, that's another reason why Utah is so good in this conference, because not too many teams in the Pac-12 have great play on the interior. Their offensive line is still going to be really good. Their defensive line has a lot of talent. Not just that you got guys who are capable of being able to stop the run, but they also are more than capable of being able to get pressure on the QB. Now, they did lose a couple of key pass rushers, but I do think with how good they are at player development, I think that Utah, their defense shouldn't have too much of a drop-off. As a matter of fact, I think that their front seven could be better this year than what it was last year. You lost Mahmoud Diabate, who I think he was all right, but I definitely think they could do a little bit better than him. And when you look at their schedule this year and how tough the Pac-12 is, you start the season off against Florida, right? Which you should win that game because Florida isn't good and you shouldn't have lost to them last year. And then you got to go on the road and play Baylor. That's going to be an interesting game, but I'll take you against that one. You got a Weber State or Weber State, whatever you use to pronounce it. So you should be 3-0 before you have your conference opener against UCLA. And UCLA, I think they're in for a little bit of a down year. I think they are in a little bit of a retool. And then you got to go against Oregon State. And this is where things start to get a little bit tough for Utah this year. Now, Utah, like I said, they're not one of those teams that you should overlook. Now, they probably won't end up being in the conversation to make the college football playoffs. But you look at their next couple of games after they play UCLA, really tough. They're playing the best teams in the Pac-12. Oregon State, they were the biggest sleeper in the Pac-12 last season. I told y'all not to sleep on the Beavs. And now they have DJ Uyunglele at QB. They could be interesting. So that could be a potential loss for Utah. It's on the road, but that game could go either way. You're playing Cal off a bye. You should be able to beat them. And then you got USC on the road. You got Oregon. You got to play Arizona State, who you should be able to beat. And then you got Washington on the road. Then you got to play Arizona on the road. Then you got to play Prime in Colorado. So I think my floor for Utah is going to be 8 wins. But my ceiling for the Utes this year is 10. I definitely think they're more than capable of being able to have another 10-win season. Because this is not a team that you want to overlook. Like, they may not be as talented as Oregon or Washington or USC, but this is a team that prides themselves on being tougher than you up front and playing old school smash mouth football and throwing the football when need be and being a tough football team. And that's just something that I don't think too many Pac-12 teams are able to handle. These Pac-12 teams, they're just a lot of finesse to me. I don't think they really know what it's like to get down and dirty in them trenches on the mountains and the hills of Salt Lake, Utah. Like, Utah, for some reason, like, is just a little bit different compared to the rest of the teams in this conference. Like, you look at Utah, and they just don't play like a Pac-12 team to me. I don't know how you guys feel about Utah and what your thoughts are about them when you see them play, but this just is a different team compared to the rest of this conference. So am I going to pick them to make it to the college football playoffs? No, I'm not. I don't think they're going to be able to make it to the college football playoffs unless they are able to improve the recruiting, because regardless what you Utes fans want to admit or not, the teams that make it to the college football playoffs are the teams that recruit at a very high level. Now, you develop at a really high level, but at some point you still got to have the talent and able to do that. So when I look at Utah, I think their ceiling is 10 wins. I think their floor is 8 wins. And if I had to give you guys a record prediction, I say they win 9 games. I don't know if I'll go 10, just because I do think that USC is going to be really good this year. Yeah, I know you beat them last year, but let's not act like Caleb Williams wasn't balling out before he got injured now. All right, but I think Utah is just being a little bit overlooked. I think some people think they could end up winning only 8 games, but I will have them at 9. They're going to pull off a couple upsets because that's just what Utah does. I feel bad for Washington, who definitely could be in the mix to make the college football playoffs, having to play them near the tail end of the season. Like, you never want to play Utah during the last remaining stretch of this season. You really don't, because this is the team that loves ruining people's college football playoff dreams. You saw what they did to Utah. Well, USC, like, everybody thought USC was going to roll over Utah. Now, we knew it was going to be a competitive game, but nobody thought that Utah was just going to roll USC the way they did. Everybody had USC as a lock for the playoffs, and Utah just rolled them boys. And same thing with Oregon the year prior. So you look at Utah, I don't think you should overlook them. I think they have the 4th or 5th best odds to win this conference, but I think they are probably the 3rd best team in this conference. I don't know who I would put ahead of them. You're going to have USC up there, Oregon, Washington, but I'll probably say they may be able to pull off an upset or two. I did say 3rd, but I'll say about 3 or 4. It's going to go either way, and even how they make it into the Pac-12 championship last year was a little bit weird. Like, I think they won like a tiebreaker. It was something weird that ended up happening, why they ended up getting into the Pac-12 championship. But I mean, like, the point is, you don't want to play Utah at the end of the year when you got college football playoff hopes on the line. So if you're Oregon, USC, Washington, you better pray to the football gods that you don't have to play the Utes in the Pac-12, because this definitely is a team that could win the Pac-12 once again, because the Pac-12 just doesn't have the kind of physicality, and they just don't have the toughness that Utah has. Kyle Whittingham is one of the most underrated coaches in college football. Like, I feel like unless you're a diehard college football fan, you don't really know how good of a coach Kyle Whittingham is. You probably could say he's a top 5 coach right now. So unless you really follow the sport and you're a real diehard or a real college football truther, you probably don't know who the hell Kyle Whittingham is. But I think that Utah is definitely being a little bit overlooked. You shouldn't overlook them. You should have learned your lesson back in 2021 when they smashed Mario Cristobal in Oregon twice. And if you didn't learn your lesson in 2021, you thought you would have learned last year in 2022. Don't sleep on the Utes. Just because they may not be in the playoff discussion doesn't mean that they still don't have a chance to win this conference. Their physicality, their scrappiness, their toughness, it's just something that always is able to get them a couple of upsets. I know when you look at this schedule on paper, you say, man, JT, USC, Oregon, and Washington, they're just more talented. Like, yeah, they are on paper, but that's why you play the games, people. Shoot, people thought that Oregon wasn't going to lose to Utah again, and you saw what happened.